In 1936, in a small village outside Baghdad, workers digging near an old railway uncovered a clay jar. Inside it, a copper cylinder, an iron rod, and traces of an acidic residue. Nothing about it looked like art. Nothing about it looked religious. It looked like a machine part. And when a German archaeologist ran the numbers, he came to a conclusion that still divides historians today, that 2,000 years before Volta invented the battery, someone in Mesopotamia may have already built one. The find came from Kujut Rabu, a small mound near Baghdad, part of the ruins of a Parthian-era settlement dated to somewhere between 250 BCE and 250 CE. The man who found it was Wilhelm König, an Austrian archaeologist working for the Baghdad Antiquities Museum. He wasn't looking for anything unusual. This was a routine excavation of everyday Parthian pottery. But when he catalogued this particular jar, he noticed the copper cylinder was rolled, sealed with asphalt at both ends, and had clearly been designed to hold that iron rod, suspended inside without touching the sides. König published his theory in 1938, arguing the jar was an electric cell, a galvanic battery. World War II delayed serious follow-up. In the 1940s, an American engineer named Willard Gray built a replica at General Electric and got it to produce roughly half a volt using grape juice as an electrolyte. Since then, at least a dozen labs and television programs have built their own versions, with some producing enough current to electroplate a small object. But the original jar itself disappeared from the National Museum of Iraq during the looting that followed the 2003 invasion, and hasn't been seen since. The obvious question, why would anyone in ancient Mesopotamia need a battery? Some researchers argue for electroplating, coating one metal in a thin layer of another for decoration, a technique historians assumed wasn't developed until far later. Small, gilded artifacts from the same era have surfaced with plating so fine that some argue it couldn't have been done any other way. If true, it would mean the region had a working knowledge of electrochemistry 1,000 years before Europe rediscovered it. Not everyone agrees. Some archaeologists point out that no wires, no connectors, and no devices meant to use the electricity have ever been found alongside it. Odd for something built to power something else. The rival theory, the jar wasn't a battery at all, but a container for sacred scrolls. The acidic residue could simply be the remains of decayed papyrus. In that reading, the iron rod's real job was structural, not electrical, and the whole design was about protecting a scroll from Baghdad's humidity, not generating current. Over the decades, several teams have tried to settle the debate by rebuilding the jar exactly as König described it. Filled with vinegar or grape juice, replicas have reliably produced a small but real electrical charge. Proof the design can work as a battery, even if that doesn't prove it was ever used as one. Mythbusters built their own version in 2005 and got it to light a small bulb. The physics checks out. The intent behind it is what nobody can agree on. There's a simpler possibility that gets less attention. The jar might just be a jar. Sealed containers of similar construction have turned up, used for storing everything from oil to small tools. Under this theory, König, working in the 1930s in the earliest days of understanding ancient electrochemistry, may have seen a battery because batteries were newly fascinating technology and pattern matched an ordinary object onto a modern idea. Historians call this a real risk in archaeology, finding what your own era has trained you to look for. And then there's the theory that refuses to die, that this was ancient technology far beyond its time. evidence of lost knowledge, or even outside influence. It's the kind of claim mainstream historians dismiss immediately, and the evidence doesn't support it. But it's worth understanding why the idea took hold. A 2,000-year-old object that behaves exactly like a piece of 18th century engineering is strange enough that speculation was always going to fill the gap left by uncertainty. Recent re-examinations have leaned the debate back toward the mundane. Materials analysis on similar vessels from the region shows asphalt sealing was a common technique for many types of storage jars, not just this one. And no example of ancient electroplating has ever been definitively traced back to a power source like this. Most historians today favor the scroll storage explanation, but they stop short of ruling out the electrical use entirely because the original jar is gone. And every theory since 2003 has had to work from photographs, sketches, and replicas alone. The Baghdad battery may be one of the most famous unsolved objects in archaeology precisely because both answers are plausible. A working electrical device 18 centuries ahead of its documented reappearance, or a scroll case that just happens to look like one to modern eyes. Without the original artifact, that question may never fully close. What's left is a jar-shaped Rorschach test, and what you see in it says as much about how you think about the past as it does about the people who built it.